Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored to welcome you to the very first World Higher Education Ranking Summit. And today we are joined by extraordinary leaders, by academics, innovators, change makers, government officials, and people that really are outstanding human beings. And for me today, it's a great honor because today I'm going to interview Noella Welsh, who is an incredible leader. She is an extraordinary woman, a behavioral scientist, board advisor, business leader. Noella Welsh is named among the most influential women in finance during her 3-decade career. She was formerly Chief Marketing Officer at FTSE 50 investment firm, Standard Life Aberdeen, following positions at Merrill Lynch, BlackRock, and PA Consulting. She's a founding director of the Global Association of Applied Behavioral Scientists. She served on the board of various businesses, sport and nonprofit organizations, including UN Women, the Innocence Project, the Football Association, and World Athletics. There's so many roles that you've done, Noella, that you're still doing. There's so much to learn from you, and I know that the audience today will really benefit from our interview. As a CEO at Mind Equity, she advises Fortune 500 companies on behavior change, organization culture, and reputation. And I am really, really honored today to have you with us, and thank you so much for your time. And let me just shed light a little bit on the topic that we will discuss today. Today we'll discuss the bias that is between academic and practitioner divide, a bias that impacts this divide. So could you please tell me a little bit about your experience of this academic practitioner bias?
Thank you, Angelica, and it is a pleasure to be here. It's a terrific topic, and my own personal experiences, as you said there, I'm 3 decades in industry as a practitioner, but I also have quite a strong academic background as well. So I lecture in various institutions around the world, and I've done my 3rd master's, so I'm quite well versed in both fields. So, but for me, to the question, I really have seen very few, or far fewer than we should have, opportunities for engagement. And that's one of the reasons why I set up, with a number of other people, that Global Association of Applied Behavioral Scientists. Because in the world of human behavior, social science, psychology, etc., we really, really need more interventions, more academic engagement. And what we have found is that there just simply isn't any. As we'll come on to, I'm sure there are a number of reasons for that. Some of them are historical, but some of them are also psychological in terms of why there isn't enough of a bridge between academia and practice. And I think, there is an understanding that there are 2 schools of thought. And, one is that the purpose of academia is to advance knowledge and to contribute to its generation and dissemination. But that's just not where it stops. It's a question of boundaries, but it's also a question of mindset. So I think it's really important to broaden not just the experimental research that academics perform, but also their mindset, how they think about it, and to the extent to which they engage. And if I just give you one very quick example I came across a study by Emerald Publishing that showed that 97% of academics feel that their research has some relevance outside of academia, but actually only a third. Oh, sorry, I'm actually going to cough. We're going to have to pause this. In a recent study by Emerald Publishing, they actually found that 97% of academics feel that their research has some relevance outside academia, but only a third felt incentivized enough to actually engage with practitioners. So clearly there's ample opportunity to engage and collaborate, and really it is probably a question of the structural disincentives and at times some of the academic cultures that you see in different universities that are preventing this happening.
This is a very important but really appalling statistics, because the divide is still there. And my next question would be on biases. Which biases impact the decisions to reduce this academic practitioner divide? And is there any global and dispositional difference on that?
It's a terrific question, Angelica. And the truth of it is that there are actually probably too many to go into right now, but there are a number, and it all boils down to, I guess, protection of the species, culture, and a number. The one that maybe might be worth highlighting is if you think about familiarity bias, which is all about how people make decisions based on how familiar they are with either facts, individuals, situations, or circumstances. There is a very strong link there to stereotyping and also to the in-group, out-group bias. Now, the reality is that both sides, academics and practitioners, are their own in-group. So by definition, academics want to engage with academics, practitioners want to engage with practitioners. It's the same underpin for gender discrimination as well. And as a result, people naturally gravitate towards people who are like themselves. So that's a very obvious one which explains it. So these reasons explain it rather than rectify it. But I think the first port of call is always to understand it. The second one is that I would draw your attention to is confirmation bias, where we seek out information that supports what we already think and reject anything that doesn't. So when we look for evidence that supports our hypothesis, again, we go to the familiar sources. So we go to other academics within our discipline who, more than likely will agree with us. If you choose to go to a practitioner, by and large, you may or may not get the answer that you're looking for. So it's a riskier area for people to engage in. But this is rampant. It's not just in academia. It's in the courtroom, the boardroom, the classroom. It's absolutely everywhere. But it's a really, really important one. I think, as John Adams says, humans are stubborn, but our minds are even more stubborn. And as a result of this, we narrow our options. Academia narrows their options, and so do the practitioners. So this isn't a blame game. There isn't a fault on either side. They are human biases, but I think being aware of them. And the third one that I think is really important is status quo bias, which is all about, I like what I do and I don't want to change. And that compels us to maintain the current situation, even when better alternatives exist, i.e. engaging, co-funding different sponsorships, different research with other groups. So when we like things as they are and don't want to change, things never advance. And of course, that is the antithesis of what academics really are fundamentally there to do. Of course, you could point to another one, which is, of course, the ostrich effect, which is, as the name suggests, the belief that people try and avoid predators by just sticking their heads in the sand. And we unconsciously ignore the fact that maybe we're not engaging enough with practitioners, even though academics, for example, really need the funding, they need access to the large databases. But again, sometimes because of cultural barriers, as in organisation and university culture barriers, it doesn't happen enough. So I think that's a really important one as well. So your question about are there global and dispositional differences? There actually aren't, because these are human biases. They may vary to degrees, but you will find in all corners of the world, in all universities, no matter what their rankings, no matter what their prestige, you will find, because they're led by humans, very smart individuals who technically are aware of all of these biases. But I think, as I found in many of my studies, is that actually, even though academics are aware of these biases, actually they are as guilty and as liable to falling into these misjudgment traps as anybody else.
This is absolutely outstanding, because we have this unconscious bias actually everywhere we go. Basically, we think that our decisions are pure and intentions are absolutely pure and non-biased, but actually we do have that unconscious bias that is affecting everything that we are doing in the society, in the community. And I love to have you mentioned this because the change is a threat, and for us to adapt, to make the progress, to bridge the gap between this divide, we have to be uncomfortable. we have to get out of the zone, and we have to be ready for the change. So my next question would be actually on practical, practical advice. It is my last question today, and it's super important to hear your insight as a behavioral scientist, as a researcher, as a leader in both academic world and business world. So what do you think can be done practically to shift this from a behavioral perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's not an easy question, but it is a potentially easily to solve if one is so inclined. At the end of the day, people change their behavior because they have a motivation to do so. So I mentioned earlier about structural incentives. Where there are incentives for people to work together, to collaborate, to negotiate together, to change their original thinking or behavior, having the right incentives in place is possible, and that is a leadership responsibility. It really is, whether you're the practitioner or whether you are the academic. So, very obvious ones I think that you will probably come across in this conference is, the gap can be mitigated through regular and productive communications and shared, national research strategies. But I think when it comes to behavior, people do what's in their rational self-interest, and people do what's easy. So easy, is it a case of, sharing credit for different publications after research? I saw some research on dementia, I think yesterday, with about 20 people listed. But again, making sure that these come from universities and, from different institutes and different facilities, I think will make a huge difference. We see it in financial services, where there is a lot of research on behavioural science about nudging, trying to shift retirement income. You see it in Swiss pharmaceutical companies. They've engaged with a lot of different Harvard professors. And even if you think of presidents and vote or politicians for voting, the amount of research that's been done, to encourage voting, to influence voting, these are very, very practical matters. I mean, Elon Musk, didn't go into space without some academic research behind him. Absolutely not. So if you need to find the incentive, you need to find the motivation and then nudge accordingly. It's too easy to just list off a couple of things, but what I have found is that greater mutual respect is a very simple and easy way to reduce these kind of conflicts and barriers. There's a snobbery in all circles. I mean, sometimes in business you hear, well, if you can't succeed in business, you go teach, which is very narrow and incorrect assumption that's made. You have, for example, the US Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice had a very hands-on, visible, complex role in government. Now she teaches political science in Stanford and writes books. So some people can successfully blend both. And I think part of the practical way forward is to appreciate the bilateral direction. So you can move from academia to practice, or you can move from practice back to academia. This is a two-way flow. And I think the more people in those corridors, if you like, between and that routing, if the more fluid it becomes, I think the more psychologically people will reduce. So I guess, to sum up, I think it's a win-win to remove these barriers that are perceived barriers that exist. Sometimes we talk about it so much, we make it real, even though it's not really real. So I think we need to be careful about that with the power of suggestion. And like the Berlin Wall, most divides are usually artificially imposed by humans. So what can easily be erected can also be easily taken down. It's simply a matter of choice and motivation. So, academia, just as much as practitioners in all disciplines, these are oath-taking, honourable professions. And I think people will eliminate the politics involved if they just remember that at the end of the day, these are human decisions about human individuals.
This is such a brilliant way to summarize our today's discussion. And it's so on point with everything that's going on right now in the world. Your words actually really matter, because if every academic that is listening to us right now, and every practitioner who is the corporate leader is listening, it's so important to understand that it's so easy to come from one area to another. The shift is so easy. It's not the boxes that we put on ourselves, those limitations. So cross-collaboration, not competition. This is the key. And thank you so much for shedding the light on such an important topic. And we really hope that today's conference will help bridge the divide between not only academics and professionals in industry, practitioners, but also in the world in general for everyone who is watching us. And I'm really honored to have the opportunity to interview you today, because it's been a real pleasure and so inspiring and insightful for me personally. Thank you so much, and I'm really looking forward to speaking again.
Thank you very much, Angelica, and best of luck with the rest of the conference.
Thank you.